not going to be able to solve our problems if we get distracted by sideshows and carnival barkers.
One Republican, one Democrat, and you discuss the issues that matter in today's local, state, national, and global politics. Hosted by Steve Hickson with co-hosts John Stanberry and Franklin Chansey. This is Backfire.
This is Steve Hickson. Welcome to another edition of Backfire. And with Franklin Chansey and John Stanberry and our chief engineer, Daniel Brantley. And God bless America.
Steve, you've got to be careful saying that. There's a professor that says that God Bless America is a warmongering song.
What professor is he? What does he teach and where?
It is Professor Stephen Mosher of Ithaca College in New York, and he says that it's a warmongering song, and it's just a matter of fact that people that want some Americans to stand for the anthem are jingoists, and they serve to minimize what real patriotism looks like.
He's a sick
liberal, progressive, left-wing loon.
He's a quack.
And he says, can't you imagine sporting events without having to listen to the national anthem? No, I'd rather imagine them without listening to whiny college professors who are crazy as hell.
Franklin, what do you think about some of the things that's happened this week with the shooters and all this? I mean, it's just sickening. It's just, it's hard to describe. I want to talk a little bit about, and I know it's all over the news and everybody's probably getting tired of listening to it, but there's something with this guy that's not being said, and,
I'll throw it out there. I think ISIS is probably correct when they claimed responsibility. There's no first off, they have about 100% track record on their claims of responsibility. They have no real reason to claim responsibility if it's not correct. They could have easily, if they weren't connected, said, look, this shows the, social decay in America. This shows the evilness in America. Americans don't even like themselves. There were plenty of other ways for them to play it. And like you said, nothing about this guy is making sense right now. No story really explains it. And we don't know, but I will not be surprised if it turns out ISIS, that he did convert, and that this was a Islamic attack.
What is your opinion?
Well, I'm not even going to begin to speculate about that. His brother, who was in business with him, says he hadn't seen any signs of any issues going on with him, period.
But he also
said he won $40,000 playing the slots a week or two ago in Vegas. It's a very ISIS type thing.
You mean
I'm not saying anything about
Franklin,
what
the 9/11 bombers spent their time in Florida in strip bars. Islamic terrorists tend to be very hypocritical.
Just stop, John. You don't have any idea what motivated this guy. Neither do I.
I didn't say I did. I said I think it will turn out that the ISIS claim of responsibility, which, by the way, Franklin, deal with that. Why'd they do it? Why would they claim responsibility?
They have claimed responsibility for other bombings.
They've been right almost
100%.
They've been right almost 100% of the time on their claims.
I think the money he's sending back to the Philippines is going to tell a lot of.
Here's the big problem. He's not a gun guy. Franklin brings up his brother. Was not a gun guy. The brother had no idea he owned any guns, much less the amount of guns that he had. And Franklin, he had explosives in his home. That's not, look, I've got a lot of guns. I don't have any explosives in my home.
I wouldn't want any in my home. Afraid I'd blow it up.
All of this, the only explanation that kind of would explain this is terrorism. If he had lost money, they talked about him being a big gambler. He would have trained his attack on the casinos who had his money, not on innocent people out in the streets.
I think we're going to learn something from the money he's wiring back to the Philippines. Philippines it's got a lot of radical people there now, right?
Well, and the dictator right now is crazy as any of them.
Oh, but he's not Muslim.
No, he's not.
But there's a lot of Muslims there and radical Muslims there, right?
They've had a lot of problems with it lately.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the guys,
His girlfriend is apparently from the Philippines.
That is true.
Right.
There's a good chance he sent it to her, but I don't.
That's the early speculation is he knew what he was going to do, so he sent money to make sure she was taken care of.
I don't disagree with that. But the problem, for example, have you heard about the cameras that he mounted?
Yeah, that he had cameras.
That's a tactical operation.
I mean, this thing was well planned. He planned this thing unbelievably well.
Built platforms in the room to be able to stand up so he got a better angle on his shots. This is a tactical operation that he did. There's no explanation for a tactical operation outside of a warlike attack. Well, why do you do that?
Well, it was clearly a warlike attack. Everything I've read thus far is the local and state and federal authorities are all stumped right now.
Well, the majority of mass shootings are domestic violence related. And so it's a unplanned, spurred, I've gone crazy, I'm going to shoot a bunch of people type attack. That's not what this is.
Well, we don't know yet. We don't know that he's not mentally deranged from being maybe terminally ill or something. I mean, who knows?
You don't know. You don't know.
Well, his brother actually said he hoped the autopsy revealed a brain tumor or something.
Franklin, you said that he worked with his brother. I didn't.
So they own some properties,
But
some rental properties together.
Yeah, but they weren't. Apparently, they were not in contact.
I mean, this guy was an accountant.
Oh,
right?
by the way, his father.
He had more things came out last night. In his life, he had worked as a United States postal worker.
He had been an IRS.
Something with the IRS and something with another federal agency at one point.
But by the way, his
federal
father
government.
was on the FBI's most wanted list.
His
Yeah, I've
father
heard
had
that.
gone to prison for bank robbery.
And
Actually,
escaped and killed people. And
his father was arrested when he was 7 years old. Said he didn't see him much in his life. I mean, there's just a lot of mysteries there.
Do you think something like that could have worked him?
I guess in any particular individual person's life, you don't know what might be going on in it. It's just so beyond anybody's ability to rationalize that. But we're all shaking our heads.
Yeah, but the more I learn about it, and the more time it took for him to plan this and put the strategy behind
He
what
had
he was
apparently been staying in that room for about a week.
Right.
He
he was well known to the hotel people. They liked him.
Mm-hmm.
He apparently was friendly with them. Apparently, one of the workers said that, look, you could have brought 2 or 3 bags in every day, and nobody would have paid any attention at all to you.
Not uncommon for people to go to Vegas with a lot of luggage. And
He could have
stuff
probably
like that.
paid somebody to bring them in.
Sure.
Well, if that happened, then we certainly want to find that person.
Yeah.
I doubt it. I'd say this is completely on his own.
They said just the weight of all this stuff would be unbelievable, John.
Well, the guns aren't terribly,
The ammunition would be.
the ammo would be pretty heavy to bring that much ammo in.
And a lot of it was not fired by the time that he apparently killed himself. He had more.
I think he got tired of shooting.
No,
I think they were
he
closing in.
Yeah.
He knew on the cameras they were closing in, but he
He
Well, he shot a security guard. A security guard went to the door, and he had a camera mounted on the peephole, and he shot him through the door. But that security guard actually did a lot to help the police know where he was at.
Yeah.
There was also an Iraq War veteran a floor or 2 below him that was actually calling 911 and reporting out, and he actually, and I hate this for him, he's beating himself up that he could have done more. He actually helped direct them to the floor and to where it was coming from.
It's amazing after you hear these stories of people taking people and putting them in cars and putting them
One
in the
guy
back
stole a
of the
truck,
Yeah, I saw that.
hot wired and stole a truck to carry people to the hospital.
It's just amazing, the people that got involved and helped support each other. It's amazing that they sung the song, God Bless America, an hour before, and the whole 30,000 crew was involved in it with flashlights and so forth. It's just amazing. It's just amazing.
But then you get people like the CBS exec that said she had no sympathy for him because
who was fired within 24 hours, as she should have been.
The fact of the matter is, she was a ranking executive in a. I mean, how do you?
I know lots of ranking people who say stupid things.
But Franklin, my point here is, how do you get to that point and have that kind of attitude?
I think that's a question that we all ought to ask ourselves.
Well, I'm glad that she was fired. And I just hate that she said anything.
Well, she's not the only one. You had a school teacher that said, I hope all the people that voted for Trump get killed like this.
And the school teacher, what's happened to her?
I hadn't heard what happened to her.
Well, I think we ought to follow it up. She needs to go too. Anyway,
now, I will tell you, if the left will be reasonable about this, there are things that can come out of this. The bump fire stock. You won't find a ton of gun people that are going to fight over that bump fire stock. Now, I make kind of a double-edged sword argument on that. What bothers me about a lot of the gun control arguments in the first place is a bump fire stock is a stock. It's nothing. It's no change to the gun itself outside of the actual shoulder piece that the gun sits in. And you could carve one of those out of a piece of wood. We've got local woodworkers that make stocks.
I don't know anything about it, but it sounded the way they were talking, it sounded like it made the gun fire faster.
No. What it does is it allows you to pull the trigger faster. The gun fires exactly the same. It's not a mechanical change at all.
I know you know a lot about these weapons and so forth.
Well, I went online. You can buy a bump fire stock for an AR-15 for about $400.
It said that if functioning properly, though, you could fire up to 400 rounds a minute with one.
But my point is, the gun...
That's a pretty big modification to what you could do as just a human being.
You're right, but here's what I'm trying to get at. The gun, the metal parts, the manufacturing parts, there's absolutely no change to them whatsoever. You don't change any of that.
So then there would be no constitutional reason whatsoever against outlawing bump fire stock, would there?
No, but my point here, you're right. I said that on the front end. You won't find a lot of people against it because effectively it does turn the gun into a machine gun. But my broader point here is anybody that wants a bump fire stock can make it in their garage.
Okay.
And so what that kind of comment that I make leads you to is if all we do is focus on the hardware and not on the human heart, you're not going to make a difference here.
Oh, I understand. I understand that this could have happened regardless of anything that had been changed legally. I mean, I understand that.
A semi-automatic gun, you have to pull the trigger every time you shoot.
But I listened to those guns going off. You know, a semi-automatic gun is pow, 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 pow.
How fast can you do that?
I guess I can do it pretty fast, but
you can.
I don't know that I could do that many times with.
You can't, but let me tell you what a bump fire stock is. All it is a stock that has a little leeway in the mount of the mechanics of the gun. So when you shoot a gun, it has blowback and it kicks back on your shoulder. Bump fire stock has a little place for your finger to sit right in front of the trigger. And you just put your finger there, and once you pull it the first time, it allows the gun to actually bump back into the stock and throw forward. And when it throws forward, your finger hits the trigger again. So you're actually pulling the trigger.
The gun is essentially pulling its own trigger after the first shot.
Correct. But again, my point here is it's still a semi-automatic gun. And you're not, that's not a technology. It's not, you don't have to go in as a gunsmith and file the trigger down, file the latch down. It's a stock. It's a piece of wood, a piece of plastic.
Let me ask you this. They were talking about things that can be ordered over the internet that can still make a semi-automatic and automatic.
It's the bump fire stock. There was also a thing called, that allowed a burst fire that is a trigger assembly. Now that's a little trickier thing. They regulate that a little bit more. because it actually goes into the mechanism of the gun, and there's question about whether that's legal or not.
So,
But the bump fire stock right now, because it's not modifying the actual mechanics of the gun at all, it simply changes the position of the stock.
well, we can see that how it was used, and
But by the way, this is also, they've been out about 10 years. This is the first time one's ever been used in a crime like this.
I would dare say the majority of people had never heard of them.
Well, I've looked at them before.
you don't own one.
But
though,
again,
right?
that goes to my
You don't own one,
No. I've thought about buying one, to be honest, but that goes to my previous point. This guy is not a gun guy.
Yeah.
How did he know about a bump fire stock? How did he buy 3 or 4 of them?
He's been buying these guns for years, John.
Not according to the brother.
Well, the brother said he didn't know he had any guns.
They identified 3 different gun shops or gun sellers in the last 2 days who had come forward and said that he had purchased from them.
One
Passed his background checks.
Several of the guns were purchased in California, the strictest gun control state in the country.
45. He owned 45 weapons.
Right?
So, and of course, I was watching the news last night, and they said that he'd been collecting these weapons over the last 10 years.
So, well, as you mentioned earlier, his brother and he had some common interests, I guess. They were not especially close.
Right.
So I don't think they were in each other's house a lot.
They favored each other looks-wise. But there's a whole lot more to this that's not being told, and John, I'm going to say, I think maybe you might be right. I think he's been radicalized. Something's happened here.
Well,
there's more. There's going to be something with this money being wired to the Philippines. He's been doing this money wiring to the Philippines for quite a while, what I understand. $100,000 just recently, but he'd been taking money and periodically sending it over there for quite a while. So I'm not sure what's going on there. And I think the money is going to lead to something.
Well, I'll be honest with you. When it first came out, the first day or so, and we didn't know anything, and it didn't make any sense, and you had his brother saying he'd never had any military experience, never had. The first thing that popped into my head, and I had someone tell me the same thing yesterday they had thought, was the Jack Reacher story. You know, that he was a dude planted in the room and killed, and this was someone else did the shooting. Now, I admit that's crazy.
Yeah.
But the point is, none of this makes any sense.
You know, he was 64 years old, I think. You know, he grew up during the era of Vietnam. Was he in the service?
Didn't say so.
I've never heard.
He also doesn't fit the profile. The average mass murderer is 34 years old. He's significantly older than the average mass shooter.
Mm-hmm. Something's going on, but I hope we'll know soon. All the families, all the people that were involved in this, it's so sad. I tell you something, it's going to take America a while to get over this. And I hope, from a political standpoint, we can keep the politics out of this.
I don't think you can. The New York Times put charts up that grossly overestimated the number of mass shootings yesterday. Not FBI statistics. They used statistics from a gun control group.
What do you mean by it?
Well, they put charts up that said the piece was titled 477 Days, 521 Mass Shootings, Zero Action from Congress. Now, their numbers come from the Gun Violence Archive, which is a gun control group, not from the FBI.
That's because the FBI is dependent upon local authorities to report all of these.
Actually, that's not, Franklin. It's because the definitions are different. The FBI says you have to kill 3 people to be considered a mass event. The Gun Violence Archive simply said if 4 people were injured, it's a mass shooting event. Well, the problem with that, Franklin, is it creates hysteria in the population, to exaggerate the numbers, to exaggerate the problem, because you have an agenda.
The facts are, this is the 276th day of this year. On 273 days of this year, there has been an incident where at least 4 people were shot by one person.
If you took Chicago,
No,
Michigan,
that's actually not accurate.
Let me give you.
Let me give you an example.
I mean,
I'm not going to go too far down this, but
I
if you look, if you look at the numbers, though, there are actually more gun violence incidents per capita, not in total numbers, but per capita in the state of Tennessee than the state of Illinois. That's a truth statement.
Now say this again. Tell me that
Per capita.
Per capita, there are more gun violence incidents. Now that's going to. Now, to be fair, I don't want to. When you do these statistics, people generally are including gun suicides in those as well.
Right, which is incorrect.
Well, I don't know if it's incorrect or not.
It's absolutely
But
incorrect.
the point, but that applies to all the states combined.
Mm-hmm.
And per person, we have more of these incidences in Tennessee than they have in Illinois.
Look, when you pull suicides account for about
2/3.
2/3 of the murder of the gun deaths.
That's true.
So if you pull suicides out, which the point on that is, for example, they talked about youth suicide, and they said, oh, look, we have this high gun ownership rate in America, and we have this high suicide rate, therefore guns cause youth suicides. The problem is Japan has virtually no gun ownership, and they have a higher youth suicide than we do. So people that are going to kill themselves are going to kill themselves.
That's limiting it to just youth. If you look at the whole population, there is no question, but the suicide rate is much higher in parts of the country that have very lax gun laws. That's a fact.
But frankly, in countries that have no guns, they have even higher
because
suicide.
guns are more effective at doing the job. That's the only answer to that.
But
it's not a
frankly,
question
the
of
point-
desire.
Yes,
it's
but
a question of success.
It is a question of desire, because if you want to prevent it, if all you do is get rid of one weapon and they switch to another
say
weapon,
anything about
you
getting
haven't
rid of
done
anything,
it. I
John.
know, but the point is, as a policy, when we're looking for a way to make society better, if all you do is focus on an item, an inanimate object, you're not going to fix the problem. That's the problem with you all's logic. And the real problem is you don't really want to make it better. You just want gun control. You've always wanted gun control.
No, I don't want gun control. I want people to live.
Well, let me tell you how this.
And then
for example,
sometimes there are things that seem to me to be very common sense things that I believe that something like 80% of the country would support. I believe that 65 to 70% of NRA members would support. That's what I think. And
we
for
would
some
support
reason,
if
we can't
people
let
because the New York Times puts inflated stories out that are biased instead of having accurate discussions of the problem. I just told you, most of us would support banning the
let me
bunkfire
give you
stock.
the most clear thing you can say about this. Our Congress has passed a darn rule or law that says the government can't even study the issue. Now that tells you it is true.
It is not true. That's a mischaracterization,
Not
and
a
it's not true.
mischaracterization.
You want me to tell you what the Congress did? The Congress said the Centers for Disease Control can't study it. They didn't say the government can't study it. The FBI studies it all the time. The Justice Department studies it all the time because it's a crime issue. What Congress said was the Centers for Disease Control couldn't study it because it's not a disease.
Let me ask this question. If we cleaned up some of these communities where they have, well, I mean, Chattanooga had several shootings.
You mean like the broken window philosophy?
Well, I don't know what you mean by that. But I'm talking about, I'm going to use Chicago. You know, Chicago had, 4,000 deaths, roughly 3,800 deaths.
They've had more there
last
than
year.
you lose in Iraq and Afghanistan.
But you never hear about it.
No, you don't hear about it because it's a democratically run city with the strictest gun control laws in the country.
I don't know what you mean by you don't hear about
Well,
it. When I was in
It's
Chicago
the
last, there were
level
stories
and
every
volume.
day about
It's the level
number
and
of-
volume, Franklin. Nationally, it's the level and volume because it doesn't fit the liberal narrative.
Why can't we clean Chicago up? Why can't we take one place at a time?
Because
and try to
Rahm
clean it up?
Emanuel won't do it.
So then he blames everything on guns?
Right. Even though they have the strictest gun control laws in the country. By the way, what I was getting at with these numbers is the numbers the New York Times used. For example, there's a Philadelphia bar fight in March that resulted in 4 people being wounded after a man pulled a gun and started shooting. Now, they got into a fight. They're drunk, and they got into a fight. Nobody was killed. 4 people were shot. That's part of their statistics of mass shootings. That's not a mass shooting. That's a drunk in a bar. If you pull out gang, they include all the gang shootings.
And he wasn't supposed to even have the gun in the bar.
That was all illegal. Wasn't supposed to have any of that in there. If you pull out the gang shootings, if you're really going to talk about people like this shooter, then you have to be honest and pull out all of this extraneous data that doesn't really fit, because that's how you're going to be able to tailor something that might actually stop some of this. But the left doesn't want to tailor anything. They want gun control. And so they will twist the data to fit their agenda. And that's why the conversation shuts down.
As far as I can tell, it's been impossible for 20 years to discuss anything involving regulation of firearms of any kind.
Well,
I don't know what John means by that.
How many regulations do we have, Franklin?
Not enough.
We have
in some areas.
20,000 laws on the book.
Okay.
How many of those laws have worked? By the way, Franklin, I'm not knocking the police at all.
The facts are that in the states that do have some significant gun control legislation, that for example, suicide rate is lower.
Where did San Bernardino happen?
It happened in a portion of California.
Which has what?
Well, it varies wildly.
Strictest gun control laws in the country.
Okay.
And you had a terrorist shooting event there. No problem getting the guns in there at all.
Yeah, you'll always be able to find some episodes of that.
Well,
The question
here's
is
your real
the
problem,
overall
Franklin.
picture.
You want to talk about numbers? Since 1994, the number of gun ownership, privately owned guns, has gone up 56% since 1994.
A better statistic that's really more relevant is that really ought to pay attention is something like 75 to 80% of the guns in the United States of America are owned by 3% of the Pacific.
So what?
Collectors.
So what?
It's not just collectors.
Well, see, let me think about the implication of what Franklin's saying. He thinks he and the progressive liberal government should be able to decide what you own or don't own. That's the basis of what he's
saying. I
talking.
didn't say any such thing.
But
What I did,
where
what
are you
I would
going with
say,
it? What's the point? What's the point
I
then?
think that there are a number of
You
people.
don't think that makes sense.
What I think is that we ought to all be concerned about is.
Why?
Will you shut up and let me
Why
finish
should you be
one sentence,
concerned?
John?
No, Franklin, why should you be concerned
Why
about
should
that?
Let
you
him
be
talk,
able to
John.
talk over and over when I'm talking?
John.
Because
Be
you don't
quiet
make
for a moment.
sense.
John, let him finish. Just let him finish here. Go ahead, Franklin.
What I think is there's a substantial subset of people out there in this country who are freaking crazy, who are actually promoting things like violence and overthrow of the government and things
Yeah,
like
they're
that.
all liberals
And there are a
now.
lot of those people
Yeah, they're
are
Antifa.
actually hoarding those guns, and yeah, they scare the heck out of me.
Guess what?
And they ought to scare the heck out of you,
I'm
too.
glad he said that, because the majority of the mass shootings in the last 2 or 3 years have all been crazy liberals. Bernie supporters, Obama supporters, Obama workers, they've all been liberals, Franklin.
Crazy
and they've
liberals.
all been attacking conservative groups, like the country music
You
people
mean like
of this
Dylan
group.
Roof?
Huh?
Like Dylan Roof? He's
No.
a crazy liberal?
No, Dylan Roof wasn't, but the rest of them were, Franklin. All the rest of them have been. They've been crazy liberals. They've been Bernie supporters.
If you want to know why we can't talk about anything in this country or get anything
Because
done,
you single
I give
people
you
out who
Exhibit
simply
A,
own
John
it.
Stanberry.
Because you single. My point,
John
Franklin, is
Stanberry,
when
who's
you
got
bring
his
up
head
3%,
so far up
guess
the
what,
NRA's
Franklin?
rectum
I'm in
that he hasn't had an original thought in 30 years.
I'm glad you said that. So let's talk about that for a minute. Because, once again, this is exactly what I'm talking about. You can't have a conversation because you're evil if you own guns.
Up 1,000%.
And crime has gone down.
Years.
Can I-
Gun
wait a minute.
homicide's gone
And
down.
gun
think-
laws
can I-
have gone the opposite direction.
I
for 30 years.
want to respond to that. Gun ownership has gone up 1,000%.
1,000% more guns
Wait a
now
minute,
than 20 years ago.
now, wait a minute.
And guess what?
Can I say-
we have tons fewer gun
Wait a
laws
minute.
now than we had
No,
20
you-
years
wait a
ago.
minute.
And he thinks
You don't have-
he thinks gun owners are
only
under
few-
attack.
Hey, wait a
is
minute.
the
You both
one
are bad. You won't let
assault.
me talk. The gun ownership went up
Yes.
when Obama went in office, right?
It started before then, but it
Nope.
did go up when he was in office.
Well, why? Why did it go up when he was in office?
Because the bogeyman at the NRA convinced them that Obama was coming for their guns in black helicopters.
Let me correct two or three
He would
things.
have if he could.
Franklin's making an excellent example of what I'm talking about. Gun ownership's gone up 1,000%. Franklin, not 2 minutes ago, I read you the actual number. It's gone up 56%.
It was
56.
it was a bad statement on my
56.
part. The number of
Then
guns
why did you say
sold,
it? Why did you
the
say
number of
1,000%?
guns owned went up 1,000%.
Well, the point is, Franklin, know what you're talking about before you say it.
I am so ignorant, John, and I'm
Well,
so
you are
glad
about
I had
this.
you here to
And
lead
by
me
the
to
way,
the promised
the
land.
3%, I'm one of those 3%.
I know that, and I'm perfectly aware of
So
it, John.
my point is,
and there are days I look at you
why
funny,
single
too.
me out? Why single me
I
out?
didn't single you out. I
Franklin,
said
there are people that own.
there are arsenals being built
You're
out
right.
there, and a lot of the people building those arsenals are not
How many cars do
law-abiding,
you own?
respectful
How many
people.
cars do you own?
Me?
Yeah.
I have 3 cars.
There are people that own 5, 6, 10, 20 cars. Should we
Well,
look?
guess
Should
what?
the government control that
Well, guess
too?
what, John? We regulate cars more than guns.
Should the government control that too?
I think there ought to be
So,
reasonable
folks, what
regulation.
he's telling you is the government ought to have control over what you do
gotta
or
at
don't
least,
do.
You got to at least pass a test to
All
drive
right,
a
so
car.
let me finish the statistic. Gun
You'd
ownership.
think a little common
Let
sense
me
would apply to
finish
guns.
the statistic. The gun ownership has gone up 56%. Gun homicide rate has gone down 49% at the same time frame. And by the way, since he brought up the NRA, so that's what they talk about, and this is the quote that came out from the Washington Post. Since 1998, the NRA has donated $3,555,194 to current members of Congress. You can log on and find out who received those donations. Here was a reply from a conservative at the Heritage Foundation. A whopping $190,000 a year spread out over 400 plus races, while Planned Parenthood spent $38 million last year alone. Are you upset at that, Franklin? You just made the NRA the bogeyman. Planned Parenthood, who murders hundreds of thousands of people a year, they spent millions in 1 year.
This is the problem with the debate. John thinks he can spout that out and nobody will notice the huge deception he just made.
What deception?
It doesn't count the hundreds of millions of dollars that got spent through all these phony
You mean
political
like George
action
Soros?
committees.
Yeah, George Soros,
Okay?
number one.
That's right.
Liberal,
all those
progressive,
things,
for
Sheldon.
gun
Adams.
control.
You can pick any side you want. But it's a lie to say that that's all the money that flowed into the system, and he knows it. It doesn't matter which
I
side
didn't
you're
say
on.
it.
You know, it is
The
what you're saying.
Washington Post said
Yes,
it, Franklin.
but you want to create the impression that that's what we're talking about, and what we're really talking about
Well,
is
then
a
who
lot
else?
of those politicians
Franklin.
are bought and paid for.
Who else do you want to censor?
I don't censor
no,
anybody.
yes, you do.
I want it all out in the open.
What open, Franklin? The NRA.
I don't want you to be able to secretly support these
Who,
things.
Franklin? The NRA is who you all target. They gave $3,555,000 over a 20-year period. The Planned Parenthood gave $38 million in 1 year alone. 1 year, $38 million.
Okay.
Are you worried about the influence of that?
All right.
Clearly not, since all the laws have been going in the opposite direction for the last 20 years.
Okay, I want both of you to get your blood pressure back down. We got to take a break. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Backfire with Steve Hickson. We'll be right back after this.
Hello. I'm the doctor.
And you're listening to WOOPLP, Cleveland, Tennessee. WOOP FM is a broadcasting service of the Traditional Music Resource Center, and we play America's original music.
Checking the cash, you got a brand new choice. Our flexible loans really making noise. Flex your money, my soul. Flex your money, my soul.
A check into cash flex loan puts you in control. Visit your nearest store for details.
Shape a flex loan to fit your needs. Make your next loan a flex loan and set yourself free. Flex your money, muscle that, checking the cash.
Some restrictions apply. See store for details.
Yeah.
Guns, guns, and more guns. That's right, folks. U.S. Money Shops has just received a large shipment of pre-owned Glock 22s, 23s, and the awesome Beretta 8040D Cougar. These guns are law enforcement trade-ins that start at just $379.99 while supplies last. At U.S. Money Shops, there's no shortage of guns, so if you're looking for a great deal on a newer pre-owned gun, then check us out first.
Buy yourself a gun today. The better way at U.S. Money Shops.
Visit usmoneyshops.com for the location nearest you.
Trane engineers put our heating and cooling products through almost every test imaginable. So while you're firing up a pot of coffee, they're firing golf balls new a compressor. Testing like this is the reason Trane is so reliable. And why our engineers tend to have a wicked slice.
Ready to indulge in Trane comfort? Call a Trane comfort specialist at Mechanical Systems, 336-5739. High-quality service and installation for more than 30 years.
It's hard to stop a train. Really hard.
Matthews Pool and Spa Company, located in Cleveland, Bradley County for over 45 years. You know them. They're your new swimming pool construction and supply company in Cleveland, Tennessee, now with 4 generations of Matthews to serve you. Matthews Pool and Spa Company, for over 45 years, your swimming pool construction and supply company, spa or hot tub installation and maintenance. Get all of your supplies for your pool or spa right now. That's the new location in the old Quinn Electric Company building behind KFC at 2724 Key Street in Cleveland. Call Matthews now, 476-4521. You better get your order in now for your new pool construction for this spring and summer. 476-4521. Matthews Pool and Spa Company. Gonna jump in. Woo!
If you need a little green, Lending Frog is making deals. He'll lend you cash on any kind of wheels. Borrow just a little, or you can borrow big. Lending Frog is a new financial gig. It's hip to hop into cash. LendingFrog.com is making a splash. Dig it, dig it. Dig it, dig it.
Financial Recovery, licensed and bonded collection agency, located right here in Cleveland, Tennessee. Give them a call at 423-473-7670. Small town service with big city results. A full service medical, commercial, retail, and individual collection service. Celebrating 10 years in business. Call Financial Recovery at 423-473-7670 to help you with your accounts receivable and past due invoices. Financial Recovery, 423-473-7670. Oh, uptown hound, I wanna go when you're out of town. I bet you never thought you'd hear me howl.
Listen to your dogs and take them to Uptown Hound when you are headed out of town. Uptown Hound, located at 3506 Old Free Will Road, 478-0555, or find them online at myuptownhound.com.
I know you need a break, but what about me? That's what I need.
You're listening to Backfire with Steve Hickson on Whoop FM. Call 423-614-5553 to join in on the conversation. Now, back to Backfire.
Well, what do you guys want to talk about now? Let's talk about the, I guess the Supreme Court coming up on dockets.
Very consequential case heard yesterday.
About the wedding cake?
No.
Which one now?
The gerrymandering case.
The what now?
The gerrymandering.
About how political districts are drawn.
Oh, okay, that's over.
It came out of a case that's been brought out of the state of Wisconsin.
It has the potential to alter the political.
The short of it is that what happened is the Republican Party got control of the legislature
and started doing what the Democrats have done for decades
on a more sophisticated basis, because what they did was they hired a political consultant who developed a fancy computer algorithm to help them draw districts so that they would most favor the Republicans Party. Okay? Hold on.
Okay.
Which is something that's happened throughout our history.
But mostly in the Democrats' favor till now.
Well, and it's long been the law that if you're extreme enough, it's unconstitutional because it destroys the idea of one man, one vote. In this particular case, though, what happened is when the next election cycle came up, the Republicans got 47% of the votes in that state and won 60% of the seats.
What about California?
Well, they weren't affected by this lawsuit.
But I know
it's in the reverse.
The same rules
in the reverse.
Same rules would have to apply. That's the question, though, whether or not the way that they're using this sophisticated technology now that really wasn't available for is going to be unconstitutional.
Franklin is dancing around when he says sophisticated. What the Democrat Party is actually arguing is they're arguing against science. They actually went into the court and said that the science is too precise.
Hold on.
So we shouldn't have it.
The scientist who came up with the fancy computer program that did it filed a brief with the court saying it was wrong and we shouldn't be doing this. Several Republican senators and congressmen filed briefs arguing the exact same thing, that it's bad for democracy for parties to be able to skew things that far. And so it's a really complex issue, and it's not necessarily a partisan issue because it could certainly work in the other direction.
It's absolutely a partisan issue from this standpoint, Franklin. You all did it to the Republicans for decades and decades, and none of you all had a single problem with it. It wasn't until Republicans started winning majorities and started doing it that all of a sudden it became a threat to democracy. That's my problem. It's the hypocrisy of this. North Carolina did it for years and years and years, and then once Republicans got in control and started doing it, all of a sudden it was racist to do it.
Well, how do you control these electoral
What's
votes?
interesting about this one is that this is not, most of the gerrymandering cases you've seen in the past have not been based upon political leanings. They've been based upon race. And that's where they got struck down. That's what's different about this one, because it's being attacked on a different basis.
This is coming out of Wisconsin, the state where the Attorney General slandered the governor, drug him through 2 recall effects, and used his office to actually attack and punish people. Malicious prosecutions, and malicious investigations, ruined people's lives for political partisan reasons to favor the Democrats. That's the state that this came out of, and it's the Democratic Party that brought the case.
So, where is it going?
But it depends on. Here's the real bad problem. I'm not necessarily opposed to what Franklin's talking about. All of this stuff, technology is getting greater and greater and greater, and it makes it harder and harder to control. But here's your real problem. Their solution to this is to put it in the hands of an unelected judge.
No,
they want a judge to determine.
That's not it. It's been upheld in several states already, where states have created independent commissions whose job was to set it up. And there may be, and it may be that if the Republicans are in control in this state, that 5 members of the commission are Republicans and only 4 are Democrats,
Franklin,
or something.
to be perfect,
but it's a lot more fair way than it was being done with these computer programs.
I'm not sure I agree with that, because this is the same argument with gun control, to be perfectly honest. The problem here is that all they'll do is find how you game that system. So if you put it in the hand of a commission, then everybody will be fighting over who controls the commission. So most of us believe the broader you can make this, the better. Now, what the solution they're going to is to put it in the hand of one judge to decide whether it's fair or not fair. Because if you have a commission, the Democrats will simply, if it's a Republican-controlled commission, they'll challenge the commission. It'll go to the judge. The judge will decide which district is right and which district is wrong. I don't want that. I don't want one judge deciding.
Kind of like
We're putting too much power in the judiciary right now. We are giving too much of our lives over to unelected judges.
Let me ask you something. The electoral votes from each state.
Mm-hmm.
You've got states like California. How many electoral votes do they have?
It's like 55.
55.
Certainly the largest number.
Right. And then New York?
Second.
It's close.
Texas is probably getting close. But I think New York is still second at the moment.
And
Tennessee's 13 for comparison.
Okay, so then you have states that are smaller states that have a lot smaller electoral votes.
Mm-hmm.
Should that be adjusted somehow?
No.
Well, it's based upon population. It's not based upon the state.
Well,
it's just where people live.
Keep in mind that we are not a democracy. We were not intended to be a democracy. We were intended to be a federal republic, because a democracy devolves into tyranny of the majority, and the founders did not want that. And the reason the Electoral College is there is because a state like, much less Tennessee, but a state like Rhode Island, nobody will go to Rhode Island. Nobody will care what Rhode Island does. No one will really care much about what Tennessee does. If you do away with the Electoral College, candidates will go to New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, Dallas, Miami, Atlanta, and that's it. And those major cities will determine who your president is. And that'll be the end of it.
Well, what I'm trying to say is the major cities, you're talking about from population. Just
If
from
you
population.
do away
That's how the electoral votes. I mean, we have 435 electoral votes, and they're apportioned based upon the population of the various states.
But the point is to give a state.
Is that based on voters?
No,
it's
it's
total
population.
And actually, that comes into play. For example, the
That's
Census Bureau adds illegals
That's
into
what
that.
I'm saying.
And so one of the reasons California and New York has a heavier weighted vote in the Electoral College is because they count illegals, which shouldn't be counted.
That's what needs to be adjusted.
Well, we argue over whether
you
you
would say the
use
same
census
thing about
data.
Texas, however.
Do you use census data or do you use citizenship, like Social
How
Security
about
data?
registered voters?
Well, that's not.
Well, that's
You don't
not,
have to vote. You don't have to vote to have
Right.
to be represented by your
you
government.
can't do that because then it. I understand you actually could do that because if you don't care enough to get registered to vote, maybe I don't want your opinion, but that's not the American way. We're not going to do that. We should, in fact, though, not be counting illegal aliens.
Then why can't we use registered voters?
You have to read what the Constitution says. It doesn't say citizens. That's the reason they've done it that way.
Actually, we didn't always do it that way.
Well-
They've done that. The Democrats started doing it that way in recent years.
So what's coming out of this? The Democrats have sued for
It
this.
depends
right
on
now.
what they do.
I actually predict that the gerrymandering in Wisconsin is going to get struck down, but I suspect that the vote's going to be something like 7-2. There's going to be a couple Republicans who vote to strike it down. I mean, I think it's a troublesome issue. It could easily go the other direction in places.
The problem
okay?
is it's a
just
troublesome
not the way to do it.
If they strike it down, it's troublesome because the party that claims they're the party of science is saying we have too much science.
No, we're not saying there's too much science. We're saying in this particular case, the science is being used to actually deny
But Franklin,
people
that's too much science.
representation.
In other words, it's too accurate. It's too good, is what you're saying.
Sometimes things are too good, John.
Okay. And in other words, so judges should decide when we have too good and when we don't.
No, I didn't say that. As I said, there are lots of
decide this.
Well,
They're going to decide.
one person
whether-
decided it this time. So why is that bad? Why was that
Because,
bad?
here's why. I'll tell you exactly why.
Look,
By
if
one
you're
person,
vo-
do
if
you
you're
mean
voting-
Scott Walker,
if
the
you're-
governor?
No, that's not what happened.
Well, here's the thing,
The
Franklin.
governor doesn't draw the districts in Wisconsin.
When it's political, there are political people you can vote out of office if you don't like it. When it's
No,
judicial,
that's the problem.
you can't
no.
vote them out of
So I'm
office.
glad you said that. That is, in fact, the problem. As I pointed out in this case, the Republicans in this case got 47% of the vote and won 60% of the seats. So the next time, no, the majority won't be able to vote those
That's
people
not
out.
true. Franklin, look, it
The
works.
majority voted against them. They lost.
It works on average like that. But if they do enough that the people of Wisconsin are upset, they'll vote them out of office. For example, the governor. If a Democrat came along, made the case, made that his sole case.
Well, statewide races are different than
But that's
in
the
individual
point.
district
They
races.
can vote the governor out and say, we want this changed. One of the reasons we voted the new governor in is because we want to change the gerrymandering laws. So democracy will function if you'll stay out of it.
Well, with all due respect, that's the issue, whether
right.
it's functioning.
That's because y'all don't like democracy when it doesn't elect Democrats. You're okay with it when you all win. When you all were manipulating the voter laws, it was okay. It's only when Republicans start doing it that it's bad.
Well, let's talk about sports betting now. That's another one the Supreme Court's looking at. Making wagers on sports games. Christie, New Jersey is appealing court rulings that effectively prevent the state from making it illegal to bet on pro and college
Making it
sports.
illegal or legal?
He wants it legal.
He wants it legal.
Yeah. games.
He wants to
and
compete
casinos
with
and
Vegas.
racetracks.
That's the problem. You can call Vegas and you can place a bet, and so Vegas gets all of the cash flow.
That's right. Or you can call your local bookie and place a bet.
Well, that's that's illegal.
That's where all the money's going, though. There's a tax there.
Look, this is a lot like a lot of other issues.
Let's talk about this just a second. A lot of people like to make bets on ball games. Why should we have it illegal?
Well, some people think gambling's just illicit and immoral, and it shouldn't be allowed. My problem with it is it's the same problem that you have with a lot of other issues. For example, these tax abatements that states give to companies to move. You can't not do it in your state if your surrounding states are doing it. So a lot of these issues actually, and this is coming from a small government person, call for a federal response. If you want gambling illegal, it should be illegal on a federal level so Las Vegas can't do it. If you're going to allow it on a state-by-state basis, then you probably got to turn them all loose, because Christie makes a good financial point that it's happening anyway. We're just losing all of the revenue.
That's right. It's happening everywhere.
So I think if you want to do away with gambling, it needs to be federal, and Las Vegas ought to be shut down. If you're not going to shut Las Vegas down, you probably need to open all the states up.
Tell us what you think. 614-5553.
I don't disagree with it.
Well, I mean, I don't understand why. You
see, those tax abatements, if you made a federal law that states can't give tax abatements like that, then you level the playing field. The problem now is if Alabama's giving a tax abatement to a company to come there, Tennessee's got to compete if they want the company.
Well, I just know there is a lot of betting that goes on. I mean,
there's never been a shortage of that.
Unbelievable.
That's the prohibition argument.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
why can't you just make it legal?
Well, here's your problem. I don't disagree, but here's your problem. That's the same argument that the legalized drug people make.
It is the same argument.
What do you mean by that?
Well, the same logic.
There's tons of drugs being used, so just legalize it.
Well, yeah, then the government gets a cut.
Right. Mm-hmm. Well, there's actually an argument. I don't subscribe to it, but there's an argument that you do away with a lot of the crime.
You would do away with a lot of the crime.
That's right. It's probably probably our jails wouldn't be as crowded, right?
That would be one factor. Mm-hmm.
Price will go down. That's another problem. Supply and demand comes into play. Price goes down. Well, then does the price going down, does that get you more drug addicts? And is that something we want as a society? There's a lot of problems that all interconnect.
Let's take a call. Go ahead, caller. You're live.
Yes, you was talking about the, people bets on ball games and this and that, and it's illegal or whatever for gambling. But what's the lottery?
I agree.
Same thing. Sure.
And then that's even more insulting, because here's the government going, well, we think gambling's really bad for people, unless of course we're collecting the money off of it.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Exactly. See, if people's betting on ball games and football, basketball, whatever, see, bookies and stuff, they're not turning in, and the government ain't getting
You're right.
their share of it. So the lottery, I know a lot of people that hooked on that lottery.
I agree. It destroys people sometimes.
Exactly. Yeah, they spend their whole paycheck every week on it.
I remember before we had it in Tennessee, if we drove to Florida, we'd drive through Dalton, and we'd stop at that little place right across the line and buy a lottery ticket every now and then. And I remember going in there, people were well, first off, it was reeking of smoke, cigarette smoke, but they were sitting there constantly scratching off a damn stack of those things.
Yeah.
Exactly. And not only that, they said it was going to be for the schools and all of this, and now they keep raising taxes on everything because they need new schools, this and that and the other. Well, when they first started out with the tax, if they passed it, it was for the schools, for
You're
the
right.
people, and the food was supposed to go down on blah, 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 and shit. That was phony.
You're right. Absolutely. And now the city's raised taxes 28% and told us it was for the policemen and the firemen, and the first thing they do is turn around and buy a decrepit a hotel building in downtown Cleveland.
And another thing, and I'll get off the phone here, and I appreciate y'all listening to y'all in the morning or whatever, and like that lady won $758 million, whatever, there on the lottery there. But you know who won? the government won. They took all the money.
You're right.
They got at least half, didn't they?
Well, and that's always frustrated me. You pay your taxes and you have money left over and you buy a lottery ticket.
Yep.
They pile all that money together and someone wins it and somehow they get a chunk of that too. It's already had taxes taken out of it.
I've been telling people that for 100 years now. I don't understand how they. I just win nothing, and I play every now and then on the Mega Million for $1, which they're going up to $2 now because the dollar ain't no money to them no more. So they're going up to $2 on Mega Million now. But she won $758 million. That's her money, as far as I'm concerned.
I agree.
Anyway, enjoy your show.
Thank you for calling.
Bye-bye.
Hey, I do have something I want to bring up before we go.
All right.
Hugh Hefner died this past week, and there's been a lot of pros and cons about his impact.
Right.
But I read something that really kind of shocked me, and I personally think that I think the left has a lot of explaining to do about how he's a icon with what he actually ushered in.
Right.
But this is on a much more personal basis. He's buried next to Marilyn Monroe. He bought the crypt spot beside her. And he said things like he wanted to make sure that he laid in for eternity next to the woman that started all of this. Let me read you just a little bit about that relationship. She married at 16 years old to escape the foster care system. A few years later, she was trying to get into modeling and acting. She was paid $50 to take her clothes off and smile. This is a quote from her. I don't know why. She signed it using a fake name. She said, I don't know why, except I may have wanted to protect myself. I was nervous, embarrassed, even ashamed of what I had done, and I didn't want my name to appear on the model release form. Hefner bought the rights to her earlier shots from a girly calendar for $500 and put it on the thing. Now, that was when she was sort of a big star. When she was asked about it, she said, I never even received a thank you from all of those who made millions off a nude Marilyn photograph. I even had to buy a copy of the magazine to see it for myself. She never met Hugh Hefner. And now, the woman who looked her whole life for love ends up with Hef, the man who spent his whole life ignoring the humanity of women and having his way ends up lauded as a civil rights hero. She never even met Hefner, never made a dime. He never got her permission. He never paid her anything. And now he's going to lay in repose right next to her for eternity. That's a pretty disgusting story.
Yeah. I've got one last one here I want to talk about, and this is going in front of the Supreme Court. It's cell tower site records. In a case about privacy in the digital age, a Michigan man who was convicted in a string of robberies of stores selling cell phones and other equipment says the police should not have been able to obtain months' worth of records of his cell phone use without first getting a search warrant. The records placed him in the proximity of the stores which they were robbed. Now, that's going in front of the Supreme Court. What's your opinions on that?
Well, that's what Fourth Amendment argument, right?
Yeah. Well, by and large, I don't know all the facts of this case, so what I'm saying may not apply to him. But by and large, I agree with the idea that the police shouldn't be able to get your cell phone records without a warrant.
I don't know. I think that's probably a very important protection of.
I mean, the world has changed. For a long time, there was a ruling that you had no expectation of privacy on a cell phone call because they could follow you. It was going out over the air. I don't think that's the way we want to go in a society that's almost all moving to cell phones at this point. To say that you have no privacy expectation, I think is just wrong.
The only places you should have no privacy expectation like that is if the NSA taps your lines and for political reasons they want to unmask you and put it out to the public. Like, Susan Rice and the Obama administration did.
By the way, nice job, guys. You managed to not even bring up a single one of the president's weekly debacles this week. Great job.
You want to talk about Puerto Rico?
That'd be 1 week ago.
Okay.
It was.
The Democratic governor says it's been wonderful.
It was so. Yeah, it was. It was so reassuring to see the president shoot baskets with paper towels to the people there.
I mean, you people are so invested in attacking him and collapse. it's a shame that you all are so invested
You had
in
a
destroying the
Democratic
country.
mayor that said something bad about Trump, and wait a minute, it went all over the left-wing wires. And then he gets down there.
Tell us
and
about
total opposite.
Tell us about the cholera outbreak, Franklin. Tell us about the cholera outbreak.
Her speech in front of all the stuff piled up behind her.
She's not attending the daily.
What you actually found out is that tons and tons of supplies that had sat in the harbor with nobody to distribute them for 10 days.
Because she couldn't get her people to show up for work.
The day after that.
Because she couldn't get her people to show up for work.
John,
well, Franklin,
all those
why
lazy
did
Puerto
every
Ricans
other mayor in Puerto Rico brag on his efforts? They did too.
Yeah, they did.
One of them said that she's not showing up to the morning coordination meetings.
They did.
And the governor, the Democratic governor,
I saw that woman out actually
she's
working
not attending the morning meetings with the military, Franklin.
Have you ever heard of anything
Explain
called
that one.
How about this? You don't have to take my word about it. How about the American general on site who said, I don't have the resources or the personnel
Because
to
it's
help out?
1,000 miles out in the middle of the ocean.
So was Okinawa.
Franklin, you all are too invested in trying to make sure that you smear this
These
president.
people should be so glad they didn't have a real catastrophe like Katrina.
By the way, folks, in Nice, France, a guy killed 86 people with a truck, so I'm waiting for Franklin to put forward the truck ban. We should ban truck rentals.
Wait a minute. You think that Trump's done a bad job with all these hurricanes? You actually think that?
No, I think in that particular case, he has done a less
Because
job.
it's 1,000 miles in the middle of the ocean. There's no roads. There's no lines to go out there with. He pre-positioned 3 huge ships before the hurricane. FEMA was on the ground before the hurricane.
Let me say something, Franklin. Part of the problem with America right now is that attitude. I think our president's done a great job. My person didn't win. Hillary's sitting there making remarks about this crap right after this shooting. That's all right. Is that okay?
Of course it is.
My Lord.
Of course it's all right.
We got to go.
Hey, I did want to mention that Butch Jones is being pushed as the new director of FEMA for his ability to evacuate 102,000 people in 2 hours.
Bye now.
You've been listening to Backfire with Steve Hickson, John Stanberry, and Franklin Chansey. Catch them again on Whoop FM at noon today and every